Okay, hopefully I'll have a opportunity to get that page open so that if something occurs to you, you can put a question in there. Let's go to the Blackboard. I have everything in there for this week. This week is the beginning of our study of poetry. How exciting. Week 7. There are 15 weeks in this semester, so we're almost halfway there. Look at that. Hard to believe. So you should have read a little bit from the textbook for today on poetry, just to kind of get your feet wet, help you remember some of the terminology, start off on that. It's just a few pages. You should have some notes on that. This week, we're going to start looking at the qualities of poetry. I kept it kind of light this week and a lot of stuff I'm going to do in class today, because I want to make sure that you have enough time to really perfect your paper and make sure that the grade counts for you. It's a super important paper for the second 6 weeks at East and also for the average at STC, because we only have 2 papers that we do this entire term. So I want to make sure that you feel supported in your process as you're writing. So I want to focus on those 2 things today. Before I get to that though, there are some updates, so let me go over them. This is an A week, FYI. You would think it would be a B week because last week was an A week, but this is an A week. They had to switch it out because we have staff development again this coming Monday. So there aren't any classes, but there have been too many more B days than A days. And so they're trying to sort of equalize that. And so this week is A and next week is also A. So for you, that means that you only have formatives on Tuesdays and Thursday this week and next week also. And remember, there's no classes on Monday. That doesn't really affect this class, but just, FYI. Also, the counselors posted in the campus newsletter that they are going to start offering TSI tests if anybody needs them. Obviously, you don't need the reading or writing one because you're in this class, but if you need math, they're doing that tomorrow and Thursday. Next week is reading, and then the 21st and the 22nd, they're doing all 3. So if you need TSI or somebody who does, they are opening up the computer labs. I think you can contact the College and Career Center or your counselor and sign up for that. Are you guys signed up for the Google Classroom for your counselor?
I'm in one with my counselor. I think it's like class of 2021 or something like that.
Yeah, there should be one that's with your counselor, but there's also one for the College and Career Center. You might want to check into that. If you go here, I have it under the seniors, but if you go to the counselor's website, you can join their Google Classrooms using this link here under Contact Us. It will open a PDF. The College and Career Center is mainly kind of reporting. I'm in that classroom just so I can know what's going on, but they're sort of reporting on reps that are coming. They are doing rep visits from colleges. So if you're waiting for the A&M rep or the UTSA rep, they are having those meetings. They've already had several, UTRGV. And the way that they're setting them up is through this classroom. They'll announce it and then you can sign up. So if you need your counselor's Google Classroom, then those are here. But if you want to join the College and Career Center, this is the classroom code for that. Especially seniors, if you're looking to do your applications, there are application fees. It's not free to apply to colleges. So every college that you apply to is going to charge you $75 up to $150 just to submit the application. Everything costs at college. So if that's not something that you want to pay, then I would try to visit with the reps and see if they can get you a voucher and see if you qualify for a voucher so you don't have to pay those fees. Otherwise, that can add up real quickly. Juniors, I know that you're not doing the application process right now, but that's something to know, is that it's not free to apply to colleges. You have to pay. for that application. So a good way to get those vouchers is by meeting with the reps. And they've been announcing the rep meetings in that classroom. So that's the way I got there, is from the counselor's webpage. I just clicked right here on contact information. And I linked to the counselor's page right here. So they'll announce stuff like TSI testing, or when there's going to be an ACT test that you can sign up for, or whatever you might need to do. I know that they're doing financial aid night on the 20th of October for parents, so that people who need to finish their FAFSA can do that. So all of those announcements come through there. I guess I might as well talk about the senior stuff while I'm in that category, and I'll go back to talking about grades. So seniors, the goal is for you to complete your Apply Texas and your FAFSA by the end of this month. So if you haven't started, you should start. If you need help with that, then I did record the session that the counselors did when they came to our class. You can go back and re-watch that. It's in the playlist for our class. When I record the classes every day, it's in that playlist. But here's a link to Apply Texas. Here is the seminar that I did about the essay. The essay is important. I've had a couple students already tell me, oh, I'm not worried about the essay because I'm already in the top 10. I'm getting into these schools. Remember that the essay and the whole application is not just about getting into the university. The essay is also for scholarships and placement in programs. So if you're looking to be in the honors college, if you're looking to get money from the schools, then they look at the application for that. So you want your essays to be in top shape. If you need some help with that, or you want to get feedback, then you can share it with me. But I did do a seminar with little videos walking you through that process of working on those essays. So that one, I'll keep linking it there. I'll probably keep this on here until the end of October, or maybe even into November, just for the seniors. And then FAFSA opened last week. That's the financial aid. Everybody needs to fill that out, even if you don't think you're going to get any financial aid, because on your college applications, they're going to ask you for your EFC, estimated family contribution, and that score comes through FAFSA. So you have to know what that number is. It's better to do your Apply Texas before your FAFSA. Joe, want me to talk about that, or? I don't like to take.
I think we're good.
Yeah. Okay. I don't like to talk too much about only senior stuff. I do like to mention it, but there's a lot of juniors in class, and it's kind of good for it to be on the radar for next year. But anyway, all that stuff's going on for seniors. Let me jump back up here to grades. The grades went in yesterday for the first 6 weeks. I want to talk a little bit about grades because it's kind of complicated with the dual classes. The grades that you have at East, I don't want to say I don't pay attention to them, but I don't look at your averages. I'm not trying to figure out who's got 69.2% or like an 89.3%. I don't know what your individual goals are. All that happens with East is when it's time to do a progress report, I just upload whatever grade is there. Same thing, report cards, because this is a semester course. This is a term course. So I'm thinking, what's your end grade going to be in December? And I'm not thinking about eligibility, really. That's something for you to think about if you're looking at your grades. I mean, I am updating grades all the time. I'm pretty good with that. But if you have an issue, like if you want to get all A's, if you want to make all A's and B's, if you need to be eligible, whatever it is, you should be watching that grade in that East grade book. You should be looking at your progress reports. So I'm not going to come to you and say, hey, your grade looks, it's dipping down into the 81s. What's going on? Because I don't know what your goals are for yourself in the course. So that is not something I pay a lot of attention to. I don't know if you know, but your transcript does not show your 6-week grades. Your transcript shows your semester average at the end, and that's it at East and at STC. So in my mind, this is a course that's designed to have certain components through the entire semester. And so, like whatever falls in that 6 weeks is what happens during the grading on that process. So if you have a goal, the weekend before grades are due is not the time to bring it up, because there's nothing that can happen at that point. I'm just going to enter the grade in the grade book. I usually do it like the Friday or Saturday before grades are due. So that's just a matter of pressing a button for me, really. If you have, you know, something that you want to work on, definitely contact me. I mean, I want to help you reach your goals. So if you have a certain goal in mind for your grades, you know, communicate with me. But, you know, Monday afternoon after the grades have gone in is nothing can happen at that point. So the thing to do is to keep an eye on the grade book and, you know, watch where you are with things, see what's affecting your grades. And at progress report, if there's an issue, you know, email me and we'll talk about what you can do to make sure that you meet your goal by the end of the 6 weeks. So it's not that I don't care, it's just that it's a semester long course and that's where my mindset is. And I know that your mindset might be in the 6 weeks, and that's okay. And I want to accommodate that, but you know, I'm not looking out to see who's eligible, who's not. I'm not doing any of that stuff. So, you know, communicate with me and we can work on grades as, you know, as need be. But I don't go in for this Friday before grades are, I don't spend my weekends before grades are due doing a bunch of grades and catching up on stuff. I'm pretty good pacing myself throughout the whole time. So I don't do emergency situations, or I just realized I'm not passing. Really, you haven't been passing for the last 3 weeks. Where have you been? So I feel like, I don't know, hopefully that doesn't sound harsh. It's not that I don't care about your grades. I just wanted you to get my mindset on how grades work in my head and in the course, because it's a term in that way. Also, dual classes don't follow the same rules that East classes do about the number of assignments that go into a 6 weeks. I think there's a rule about how you have to have at least 8 assignments in a 6 weeks in other classes, but dual classes don't follow that. There'll be some 6 weeks where there's only 2 assignments, you know, like a paper and, you know, an infographic, and everything else we did through discussion or other means. So it just depends on where that 6 weeks starts and stops. So kind of keep that in mind. Are there any questions about that? Also note that the grades are not always going to be the same in the East grade book as in the STC grade book, and that's because of they're weighted differently. So I do use the 60-40 weighting for the East grade book. Daily stuff, quizzes, things like that are, you know, infographics, etc., are in the 60% minor assessment category, and then the major assessment are like papers, tests, exams, summer reading, stuff like that. So that's 40% of your grade. The STC has a different weight breakdown. You can see it in the syllabus, but you know, papers count 40%, final drafts of papers. So there's a little different breakdown. So the percentage might not be the same between the two schools. So I guess kind of keep an eye on both grade books for your goals. Okay, any questions about the updates? You can put it in the chat. Are you over here doing anything on this thing? They didn't put anything on last period either. Maybe you guys are just all set with your papers. I don't know. All right, let's move on and talk about the stuff for Tuesday. Today there is a formative. There's another one on Thursday down here. So just remember to do that. I do give feedback on formatives. I will give a score, you know, and then every once in a while there'll be a comment that you should get, like a little notification. There's a little bell at the top on formative that's got a little red notification, and you can read comments and communicate with me there too. I think it's a good way for us to talk about the subject matter in the class, you know, kind of like as we're going through it, and it's a good way for me to see how you're doing with that stuff. All right, papers are due this Saturday. Some people have already shared their papers with me and I've given feedback. I'm in the process of doing that. I think I have maybe 4 papers that are in queue waiting for me to look at, or thesis statements. Some people just shared, you know, like their first couple of paragraphs and they want feedback. I usually get back to that within 24 hours. So if you met the deadline of sharing that with me by yesterday, I sent 6 or 7 back yesterday with feedback. And then I have like 4 more to look at. So if you sent me your stuff yesterday, you should get that back this afternoon. After I'm done with all the Zoom meetings, I'll go ahead and look at those and give you feedback. If you have questions about your paper, definitely communicate with me before Saturday. I do want to go over the scoring guide. So the paper assignment is down here where you can submit your paper. But if you go to the assignment pages here also, if you go to the scoring rubric, maybe it's a good time in your process right now to look at the scoring and kind of see where you think you might fall when you're working on redrafting or reworking your first draft. These are the 4 things that I'll be looking for with the paper: formatting, organization, grammar, and thesis and support. So obviously you want your paper to be over here in this exceeds expectations row. If you want to do, you know, like an upper level B or an A on the paper. Obviously my ideas about what it means to be complex and clearly stated are my ideas. So a lot of times people will email me and say, where do you think I am with that? So one thing you can do is say, here's my thesis. Do you think that it's, you know, okay? Is it valid? Whatever. I will tell you that the category that weighs the most is the thesis and support down here. This is the one I look at the most in the paper. The other 3 things are, you know, are a factor, but if the paper doesn't have a strong thesis and then the paper itself doesn't support that thesis, then it can't pass. It can't get a passing grade. A paper that has a decent thesis, good support, doesn't make more than 10 grammatical errors, is organized into paragraphs that flow logically, and mostly uses MLA, is going to make, you know, like a C. So you can use this as a tool to kind of like gauge where your draft might be. If you haven't shared your draft with me to get direct feedback from me, then you can look here and kind of see what I'm looking for. So I would say that in my mind, thesis and support is probably 60–70% of the grade. But if this other stuff isn't working out, then the communication is a problem. You know, if you have a good idea, but it's not organized and it's not grammatically correct, then those things are getting in the way of your idea being understood. So I would say focus most on thesis and support, but do run your paper through Grammarly. Do look at organization. I can talk about organization of the paper if you want me to, if you put it over here in the Menti thing, if you want me to talk about it before we go today. What else on the rubric? That's pretty much it, but that's there so that you can refer to it. Some people have been emailing me their papers and saying, I just want to make sure my thesis is okay and my support is there. And all the other stuff I'm going to clean up on my own. So I'll just go through and I'll make comments on those specific elements of the rubric. But that's there as a tool for you so that you know how I'm going to be grading it. And the assignment page is here also as a reminder. MLA formatting. Now, by that I mean margins and spacing and fonts. This is not a paper that you are going to be doing in-text citations for. You're not, I mean, the works cited has one thing on it. It's going to be the story that you're using. The rest of it is, you know, the usual research documentation does not happen in this paper. So when I say MLA page formatting, what I mean is that your paper should look like this one on the sample. You have to have everything lined up with your spacing, with what should be in your heading, how the date gets written, how you have your header set up with your last name. I'm assuming that you've done papers like this before, but if you haven't, you know, double check. Maybe you did a lot of APA papers last year, and it's, you know, getting back into MLA is a little rusty. This is a little refresher for you about that. So title centered. Make sure if you're using the title of your story, you're using quotation marks, all those grammatical things. What else? Scoring, already talked about that. There are some thesis examples. So I did put a lot of things on here to help you with the paper that you should look through. So there are examples of almost everything. multiple examples of almost everything on here. So all those are designed to help you. Okay. Maybe I'm just beating a dead horse and everybody knows what to do. That's good. That's a good world to live in. All right, I wanted to spend a little bit of time having everybody share their infographics. We're not in a classroom where I might have you go up to the camera and show us your infographic that you did because, you know, we're on this virtual situation. So what I did instead was I had everybody post to Padlet. And if you click on that infographics link, I would like for you to go to the Padlet right now. And what I did was I opened up comments and likes. So I wanted you to take maybe 6 or 7 minutes to look through some of the different submissions that your classmates did for their infographic and kind of just visit with them. You can open them up and see what structure they use, some of their ideas. And if you see some that you like, then go ahead and give your classmates a little bit of love with a heart there. You can make a comment if you like, but I kind of want you to get a feel for what other people decided to do on their projects. So I'm going to turn off my microphone for just a little bit and let you look through some other people's finished products.
I accidentally tapped on my earbud and it ended the Zoom for me.
Oh, okay. That seems touchy, but usually isn't it do volume?
No, for my earbuds, there's like a button on the outside, like right on the outside of it, and I
Mm-hmm.
had like accidentally grazed it while picking up the volume.
Oh man. Marcus said he had problems too with his laptop. Well, finish looking at the infographic that you're on. I just wanted to give everybody a chance to see like kind of what other people did. I think that this is a more creative way to wrap up the short fiction unit. Hopefully you had some fun doing it. I know assignments just aren't fun in general, but I think that it's more fun than doing a worksheet or something like that, is using your creativity and also your knowledge to kind of come up with something new. So that was the goal with that one. Obviously, I'll be grading them on Blackboard over the next week or so. But I was really happy to see that people went and found really interesting images to include, and like because of the infographic part, went and found still images of the stories that apply. And I think that it turned out really well. So hopefully you all enjoyed that process. I want to spend the rest of the time today introducing you to poetry, doing a little bit of an introduction. We're going to look at several different poems as examples of the qualities of poetry that make it unique. Poetry is a different genre than any other. We could say that short stories and novels are really similar, except one's short, one's long, but they all have a plot, they all have the same sort of elements going on. Poetry is sort of its own unique element and genre. So I think that it's good to talk about what makes poetry different as a way of introducing poetry to you for this unit. So I don't know, you might want to jot some of these things down in your notebook. I'm not going to analyze these poems. I just want to present them to you as examples of the qualities of poetry that are unique to that particular genre. And I have them listed here, right? Poetry is different and special because it has intense emotion and it has compacted and layered ideas. The beauty of the language comes forward in poetry in a more immediate way. And the meaning is sometimes more poignant. And all of that is because we have it all compressed into, a smaller piece. And the poet has to navigate the shortness of the space that they have to create the poem. And all of that creates these elements. And so I think that's what's special about poetry. And so I wanted to present to you examples of each one of those four. Now, all four of them and all poetry have different aspects of these things, but I wanted to sort of heighten those for you as we talk about them. And so those are the four things to look for in poetry, then, just in general. You should have read a few pages from the book, which is sort of an introduction and maybe a refresher on some terminology in the textbook. I didn't make another textbook reading for this week. We can do it next week because I wanted you to, spend some time finalizing your paper, and I didn't want to take away from that time. Also, I didn't want to assign all these poems to you because I wanted you to have your time to work on that. But I do want to share a little bit with you. So for intense emotion, I think one thing that we can look at as an extreme example of that is spoken word poetry. Do y'all know what spoken word poetry is? Have you studied that? Anybody?
Not that I remember.
No? So spoken word poetry, there's a chat. No. Okay. Spoken word poetry is poetry that is written in order to be performed. And so the idea is that it might end up in a book, but that's not the primary purpose of it. The primary purpose of it is to stand on a stage and present it to a live audience. And that happens sometimes just in presentation mode, right? Here's a poetry reading. But then sometimes it also happens in contests called slam poetry contests. And so people will actually get up, kind of like a rap battle, right? That's a thing. So kind of like that, except with poetry. So spoken word poets write their poems with the mindset that they're going to be performing them in a live situation. And so for that reason, they have a really intense emotional reaction, not just for the person who wrote it, because very often the poet's own perspective on politics or controversial issues or their life events or whatever, but it also relies on the audience bringing their emotion and reactions to the poet, because the poem wasn't written to sit in a book on a page. It was written to provoke the audience. So I want to share with you a couple of my favorite spoken word poems. I think we'll have time for 2 of them at least. The third one is a little bit longer, so we may not get to it, but I want to share the first 2 with you. My favorite of all time is OCD by Neil Hilborn. And I'm just going to give you context, because usually with poetry, the first time you read it, you're just sort of like a little overwhelmed with it, and it takes a second reading. But we're not going to spend that much time on these example poems. So I'll give you a little bit of a framework of reference. So the poem OCD is about a young man who falls in love, and he has OCD, which complicates the relationship. So I want to play that one for you. And the thing to be looking for is intense emotion. I don't think it will be difficult for you to see intense emotion, but I need to turn off my AirPods so that the audio works on this YouTube video. So let me play this one for you.
The first time I saw her, everything in my head went quiet. All the tics, all the constantly refreshing images just disappeared. When you have obsessive compulsive disorder, you don't really get quiet moments. Even in bed, I'm thinking, they're locked door yet, watch my yet, locked door yet, watch my yet. When I saw her, the only thing I could think about was the hairpin curve of her lips, or the eyelash on her cheek, the eyelash on her cheek, the eyelash on her cheek. I knew I had to talk to her. I asked her about 6 times in 30 seconds. She said yes after the third one, but none of them felt right, so I had to keep going. On our first date, I spent more time organizing my meal by color than I did eating, fucking talking to her. But she loved it. She loved that I had to kiss her goodbye 16 times or 24 times if it was Wednesday. She loved it took me forever to walk home because there are lots of cracks on our sidewalk. When we moved in together, she said she felt safe, like no one would ever rob us because I definitely locked the door 18 times. I know what comes around when she talked, when she talked, when she talked, when she talked, when she talked. When she said she loved me, her mouth would curl up. At night, she'd lay in bed and watch me turn all the lights off, on and off, and 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 on and off. She'd close her eyes and imagine the days and nights were just passing in front of her. Some mornings, I started kissing her goodbye, but she'd just leave because I was making her late for work. When I stopped at a crack in the sidewalk, she just kept walking. When she said she loved me, her mouth was a straight line. She told me I was taking up too much of her time. Last week, she started sleeping at her mother's place. She told me that she shouldn't have let me get so attached to her, that this whole thing was a mistake. But how can it be a mistake that I don't have to wash my hands after I touch her? Oh, it's not a mistake. It's away from me, and I just can't. I can't go out and find someone new because I always think of her. Usually, when I obsess over things, I see germs sneaking into my skin. I see myself crushed by an endless succession of cards, and she was the first beautiful thing I ever got stuck on. I want to wake up every morning thinking about the way she holds her steering wheel, how she turns shower knobs when she's opening a safe, how she blows out candy, 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 blows out. Now, I just think about who else is kissing her. I can't breathe because he only kisses her once. He doesn't care if it's perfect. I want him back so bad. I leave the door unlocked. I leave the lights on.
Okay, so hopefully you can see the intense emotion in that poem as it's presented. In the audience too, right? Did y'all hear the reactions of the audience members in that as it was performing? Yeah.
That's intense.
I know, kind of the beauty of spoken word poetry. Yeah, it's intense. So even when we see a poem on the page, we have to kind of imagine that energy. We have to kind of see, even if it's not a performance for us, like spoken word poetry, where is the emotion that this 17th century poet is
trying to portray to us. It's super obvious in a poem like that, but not as obvious in some other things that we'll read that are in the textbook. Other comments? Did you like it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to read the words on some of them because I couldn't understand, like, because he was talking really fast.
Yeah, and that's also the nature of spoken word poetry, is that the emotion gets so intense that the person performing it sometimes, you know, doesn't make it super clear. But that's the immediacy of it. You know, it's in the moment.
It reminded me of the guy from America's Got Talent.
Yeah. Somebody told me that, I don't watch that show, but somebody told me that the winner of America's Got Talent was a spoken word poet this last season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check
he was really good.
Okay, that's good. I have one more that I want to share with you. It's got a different sort of emotion to it. Obviously, that one is love and, you know, talking about OCD and all of that. But this other one I want to share with you is called Anne Frank Offers Justin Bieber a Lesson in Humility by Sarah Lawson. So Sarah Lawson, this is more of an issue-based poem. I think the first one was kind of on a personal level. But this one is more based on, there's a personal reaction, but also sort of current events. So Sarah Lawson wrote this poem and performed it a few years ago, but apparently Justin Bieber went to Anne Frank, the house where Anne Frank hid during the Holocaust. I don't know, y'all remember Anne Frank, right? Did you read the Diary of Anne Frank when you were in middle school or something?
No.
Anne Frank was a young girl who, during the Holocaust, she and her family were taken in and hidden in an attic for, I don't know, like 2 years, so that they didn't have to go to the camps. And they had to, all day long, stay completely silent in the attic, and people tried to help them by giving them food and so on, but she kept a diary. And so the Diary of Anne Frank is an actual diary that she wrote during the time that she was hidden in this attic. And the house still exists, and so it's a museum, obviously, and a very, she ended up dying. She didn't make it through the Holocaust. They found them. And they, so it's a very reverent sort of almost, you know, it's a place of great respect and, you know, remembrance. Well, when Justin Bieber went there on a trip that he was on, he went and wrote in the guest book, like a lot of places like that have a place where you can register that you were there. And Justin Bieber wrote something that wasn't the most sensitive thing in the book. And so Sarah Lawson's poem is about how, from the perspective of Anne Frank herself, she's taking on the persona of Anne Frank, and she is sort of like teaching Justin Bieber a lesson. So I'm going to play that one for you.
In April 2013, pop singer Justin Bieber visited the home of Anne Frank. In the guest book, he wrote, "She was a really great girl. I hope she would have been a believer." Anne Frank offers Justin Bieber a lesson in humility. If there is a God worth praying to that lives in someone's skin, I have already found her inside of me. Don't need your wind-up toy to pray to. I am the girl inside the music box. The only ballerina who pulled a dance from her own captivity, painted the walls with it. Justin, don't enter my home and demand it care about your music. I've already plucked a tune from the gaping wounds in each crack in the paint here, sang a lullaby to the sound of the boots pacing outside. One night before bed, I gathered all the air inside my lungs. When I woke up still breathing, I named this moment my symphony. So great girl might be legacy enough for you. Nobody wanted this girl sitting next to them in school. Nobody wanted to write about what it's like to become girl. Nobody wanted to keep me quiet in their cupboards. Nobody wanted my hands to hold their children's hands. Now everybody wants a piece of my bones.
Thoughts?
Wowzers.
Yeah, right?
Can you feel the
Hmm.
emotion?
Yes.
Yeah. Obviously, she's angry, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's a really creative thing to take on the persona of Anne Frank, right? A really delicate thing. But it's also about social commentary, right? You
Yes.
know, like ultimately what's more important, somebody who is a media star or the legacy of, you know, people who can teach us life lessons through history. And it's not saying that Justin Bieber isn't important in his own way, but when you go to somebody else's house, that house is about them, right? And he turned it into being about himself. And that apparently was a big no-no for Sarah Lawson and probably most of humanity. Other thoughts on that poem?
No.
Okay. Well, hopefully you can see what I'm talking about when I say that poetry holds for us intense emotion. Those are the best examples that I can think of, that spoken word poetry. There is a big spoken word poetry, you know, following here in the Valley. They have meetings, they have, well, maybe not so much since COVID, but they have slam poetry contests and all kinds of stuff. It's mainly centered over in Edinburgh and McAllen, but there are a lot of people who engage in these kinds of presentations. So if you're interested in that, I can give you some feedback. There's another one here that I don't think I have time to play because I think it's like 20 minutes long, but to this day is a really poignant piece about bullying, and from the adult perspective of somebody who has been through bullying experience. So I put that one there in case we had time, or so that you can go back and check it out another time. But I want to get to the other three qualities of poetry that make it special. The next one is that it is compacted and has layered ideas. Things just packed on top of it so much that you have to unpack and you have to look at the details of a poem and really spend time sifting through the different sections. It takes a little bit longer to go through poetry than it does, say, a novel. So I want to share with you one of my favorite poems. I have a lot of favorite poems. I'm going to say every time I sign a poem, it's my favorite. But I really like this poem because it describes snow. And for people who've never seen snow, this is the poem that I give them because I feel like it best describes snow. And it doesn't ever say snow, but this poem has a really layered description of snow so that she's dealing with snow on so many levels. And so this is a poem that depicts those layers of poetry. I'll read it for you. It sifts from leaden sieves, it powders all the wood, it fills with alabaster wool the wrinkles of the road. It makes an even face of mountain and of plain, unbroken forehead from the east unto the east again. It reaches to the fence, it wraps it rail by rail, till it is lost in fleeces. It deals, celestial veil, to stump and stack and stem, a summer's empty room, acres of joints where harvests were, recordless, but for them. It ruffles wrists of posts as ankles of a queen, then stills its artisans like ghosts, denying they have been. All right, so there's a lot going on in this poem about snow. And she's describing the way that it hits the landscape, how it changes our view of the landscape, what it looks like as it's flying, what it looks like once it's landed, how it looks like lace when it runs up against something. There's just so many different ideas that are presented in these 20 short lines that it's a real good example of how compact an idea can be. I'm not going to spend any time going over the poem because part of your homework is a video where I show you how to analyze a poem, and I use this poem as an example. So you'll be getting that later on. Beauty of the language is another aspect. Just the sound of poetry sounds different than other types of literature. And the example I want to use for that is Sonnet 17 by Pablo Neruda, who wrote in Spanish, by the way. I do have the Spanish version on this little document. I don't read Spanish particularly well out loud, so I'm going to read it in a translated form. If somebody wants to read it in Spanish, they can. But this one is an example of the beauty of the language and how it sounds and the repetition of it. So Sonnet 17. I don't love you as if you were a rose of salt, topaz, or arrow of carnations that propagate fire. I love you as one catches certain obscure things secretly between the shadow and the soul. I love you as the plant that doesn't bloom but carries the light of those flowers hidden within itself. And thanks to your love, the tight aroma that arose from the earth lives dimly in my body. I love you without knowing how or when or from where. I love you directly without problems or pride. I love you like this because I don't know any other way to love, except in this form which I am not, nor are you. So close that your hand upon my chest is mine. So close that your eyes close with my dreams. So you can hear the cadence of poetry that just sounds beautiful to our ear. Poetry is very musical, right? Yeah, does anybody want to read the Spanish one?
I don't know how to read Spanish.
No, does anybody want to read it?
Not tomorrow, now.
No? Well, luckily I have someone here to read it for us.
Soneto 17. Si fueras rosa, adiós, flechas de claveles que provocan el fuego. Te amo como se aman ciertas cosas oscuras, secretamente entre la sombra y el alma. Te amo como la planta que no florece y lleva dentro de sí escondida la luz de aquellas flores. Y gracias a tu amor vive oscuro en mi cuerpo el apretado aroma que ascendió de la tierra. Te amo sin saber cómo, ni cuándo, ni de dónde. Te amo directamente, sin problemas ni orgullo. Así te amo porque no sé amar de otra manera, sino así de este modo en que no soy ni eres. Tan cerca que tu mano sobre mi pecho es mía. Tan cerca que se cierran tus ojos con mi sueño.
Okay, so you can hear the beauty of the language. It doesn't matter the language, right? Poetry is written in every language. So it's about how the words sound together.
Cadence of those words. So I feel like in English and in Spanish, that poem does the job. Reflections on that poem? Anybody?
No.
No, just didn't do anything. All right, the last thing about poetry is poignant meaning. And the one I want to share with you for that one is digging. So poignant meaning is about, you know, like how you can have a realization, or it brings together like a human observation about life that might take a novel 300 pages to get through, but in a short poem can point out like a theme that really gets to our heart and our soul. And the example I want to share with you on that, our last example for today, is Digging. Digging is a poem about generations, and it's a poem about work. So I'm going to read this one for you. Digging by Seamus Haney. Between my finger and my thumb, the squat pen rests, snug as a gun. Under my window, a clean rasping sound when the spade sinks into gravelly ground. My father, digging. I look down till his straining rump among the flower beds bends low, comes up 20 years away, stooping in rhythm through potato drills where he was digging. The coarse boot nestled on the lug. The shaft against the inside knee was levered firmly. He rooted out tall tops, buried the bright edge deep to scatter new potatoes that we picked, loving their cool hardness in our hands. By God, the old man could handle a spade, just like his old man. My grandfather cut more turf in a day than any other man on Toner's bog. Once I carried him milk in a bottle corked sloppily with paper. He straightened up to drink it, fell to right away, nicking and slicing neatly, heaving sods over his shoulder, going down and down for the good turf, digging. The cold smell of potato mold, the squelch and slap of soggy peat, the curt cuts of an edge through living roots awaken in my head. But I've no spade to follow men like him. Between my finger and my thumb, the squat pen rests. I'll dig with it. So at the very end of this poem, we get the poignant meaning that he is not a farmer like his ancestors, but he can still use his ability to write to dig in a different way, to dig through emotion and dig through ideas. So I think that if we go back to this list over here, these are the 4 things that kind of set poetry aside from other elements. And those are the 4 things that you should basically be looking for in a poem. Obviously, when we're analyzing and we're looking at metaphors and trying to figure out the technical things that a poet's doing, we're gonna look at other aspects. But in terms of just enjoying a poem, these are the things that we can keep going back to. I know that we're gonna be dissecting poems a lot, but it's also important to just enjoy poetry, I think, like these examples that I'm giving you. So questions on any of that stuff before I wrap up? All right.
No questions, Liz.
No questions, okay. No questions, all right. So Thursday, you have a formative to do, and then Saturday, the paper's due by the end of the day. So, you know, pay attention to your deadlines there. The only other thing I have for you to do this week is for Tuesday next week at our next class meeting. I want for you to have watched this video that I made. I want to teach you a way of analyzing poetry that I call the 1, 2, 3 analysis. And there's a video, it's a little on the long, it's like maybe 25 minutes long, maybe 30 minutes, where I explain the 1, 2, 3 analysis. And I'll go through and actually do a 1, 2, 3 analysis on this poem that we just read about snow. So I want you to watch that video and learn the process of the 1, 2, 3 analysis. And then I want you to choose one of these poems. You don't have to do all of them. Choose one and do a 1, 2, 3 analysis in your notebook on that poem. Or you can print out the PDF and, you know, write on it if you want to do that. And that's it for next week, because I want you to focus on the paper. So questions on the assignment?
No.
Watch the video, learn how to do a 1, 2, 3 analysis, and then do a 1, 2, 3 analysis. All these poems are about poetry, because we're just starting. Let me see if there are any comments over here. Organization of the essay. Okay, let me spend a little time talking about that. I think that the important thing to remember when you're organizing your essay is just to make sure that the thesis, that it's organized according to the thesis. So if your thesis has 3 parts to it, then your paper should basically have 3 parts to it. If your thesis has, you know, multiple sections to it, then you should take each part of the thesis and go through it part by part. Other people might decide, because they're writing about a story, that organizing according to the chronology of the story might be smart. For example, you might start, you know, if you're talking about, you know, maybe a feminist lens on one of the stories, you might talk about how the feminist lens would read the story in chronological order, the different things that happen and how the feminist lens helps like how we react to that through that lens. So you kind of have to look and see, think of your reader as somebody who knows the story. You don't have to summarize the story very much for your reader. The person who's reading it knows the story. But think of your reader as your student. When a teacher's presenting a new concept, just like you'll be presenting a new idea with your thesis, We always want to make sure that we start with the basics first and then move through to the more complex things as we go through time. I mean, if we started with the complex things, everybody would be lost all the time. So we start with the building blocks and then we slowly expand as we learn a concept. So in your paper, your thesis is your concept. You're communicating that for the first time to me as your reader. So you can also think about your organization as a lesson, right? How would I start off so that clearly the person reading my paper knows where I'm going with this? They understand what my point is. And then you can build by giving examples from the text and tying it into your thesis. You should be continually in your paper tying your ideas back to the thesis statement. So before you finish a paragraph, it should be clear at the end of that paragraph how everything in that paragraph ties back to the thesis. That will help you not like get distracted and go off into, you know, left field and have trouble getting back. So if you think about each paragraph as a different aspect of your thesis that you're proving, then usually that organization works well. Anything else specific about organization with the essay? Everybody will kind of make their own choices about organization. So I can't say if you're writing a paper on yellow wallpaper that is a new historicism lens, this is how you should organize it. But I do think that the best advice I can give you is to look at your thesis and organize based on what would be the best way to work through that thesis. And if you're not sure about your organization, then you can always ask me, right? Anything else up here? Let me do a refresh. Before I sign off for today, I just want to make sure I touch on anything else. All right. Any questions on what to do this week or before Saturday?
Nope.
Everybody's good?
I believe
All
so.
right. Okay, well, let me know if anything comes up. Other than that, I hope you all have a great week. And I will see you next Tuesday.
Later,
Good work
Miss.
today, guys. Have a good day.